Be talking about the Supreme Court case Smith and Wesson Brands Incorporated versus Estados, Unidos, Mexicanos. And my name is Ashton Arroyo. So, the two constitutional questions posed by the court in this Supreme Court case were, is the production and sale of firearms in the United States the proximate cause for damage and violence in Mexico caused by drug cartels? And also, they ask, should gun companies be held accountable for producing guns while they are aware of the illegal trafficking that occurs involving their product? So, here's some background of this case. One act that is mentioned multiple times and you should be familiar with for this case is the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, otherwise known as PLACA, which this act prohibits blaming gun companies for violence caused by their products and mostly prohibits lawsuits against their companies, which Mexico uses against them in this case. Next, what are drug cartels? So the first drug cartel established a line of drug trafficking in the late 1960s, and they originally only focused on marijuana and tried to develop homemade aircraft used to smuggle their goods to places in Mexico. They started becoming more powerful when they introduced cocaine into the region and got more people hooked on that drug. And prominent figures like El Chapo and other cartel bosses gained power beyond any government official, and not just power, they gained popularity all over the world, and especially in the US. And Mexico was struck with violence and crime, as cartels would do anything to get their product to the people, even if that meant involving violence or combating the Mexican law enforcement or military. So, people asked, where are the cartels getting these weapons powerful enough to combat the Mexican military? Here are some facts of the case. So, fed up with violence in their country, the Mexican government sued multiple gun manufacturers that were based in the US. These gun companies argued that they were protected by PLACA, which ultimately barred Mexico's original claim. So, Mexico appealed, arguing that the gun companies are aware of the damage that they're causing in Mexico and still continue with sales, which ultimately is a violation of PLACA. So, Smith and Wesson appealed to the Supreme Court. Here is the oral argument heard on March 4th, 2025. This is a clip of Mexico claiming their claim.
Mexico's complaint pleads that petitioners aided and abetted violations of specific federal gun laws and that those violations proximately caused Mexico's harm. That satisfies PLACA's predicate exception. First, the complaint details that petitioners deliberately supply the illegal Mexican market by selling guns through the small number of dealers that they know sell a large number of crime guns and who repeatedly sell in bulk to the cartel traffickers. Petitioners' arguments ignore these allegations. Next, as the court said in Twitter, an aider and abettor is liable for harms that were a foreseeable risk of that violation. That framing, foreseeable risk, is the proximate cause question. As this court put it in Bank of America, does the harm alleged have a sufficiently close connection to the conduct the statute prohibits? The answer is yes. The laws broken here are designed to keep guns out of criminals' hands.
So, here's the holding of the case. The court hasn't officially ruled on this case yet, but they concluded that Mexico's lawsuit against the gun manufacturers was not barred by PLACA. And the court found that Mexico's allegations of aiding and abetting illegal gun trafficking that caused harm to Mexico was plausible enough to proceed with this trial. This means that the case will likely be remanded to a lower court for further proceedings. Implications of the case. With the case most likely being remanded to lower courts after the SCOTUS found plausible evidence supporting Mexico's claim, gun manufacturers will most likely have to pay for the damage that they caused in Mexico. Further restrictions will be put on the international trade of guns to Mexico, and stricter background checks will be had on people who want to buy guns, making sure that they aren't responsible for sending guns to the drug cartels in Mexico. And here is my works cited. Thank you.